Welcome to the Texas Talks podcast. I am your host, Brad Swail. Today, I welcome to the show Professor and holder of the Helen and Roy Ryu Chair of Economics and Government at the Bush School of Government and Public Service, and the director of the Mosbacher Institute for Trade, Economics, and Public Policy, Dr. Raymond Robertson. Dr. Robertson, how are you?
Doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me, Brad.
I'm excited to talk to you. That was a mouthful of an intro that I just sort of gave. You know, Mosbacher Institute of Trade, Economics, and Public Policy. I think people sort of get an idea. You're a professor of economics, is that correct? Sort of the big picture?
Yeah, that's right. I'm one of the very few international economists that work at Texas A&M. So a lot of the international stuff lands in my lap. So it's always fun to talk about it with folks.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you want to give more of a brief background, sort of, what the Mosbacher Institute for Trade, Economics, and Public Policy is, sort of what type of economics you teach?
Yeah, absolutely. So as an international economist, that includes a lot of different things, including trade policy, international trade, tariffs, which have been in the news a lot lately, and it's been fun, a couple of weeks for us, and also migration and any kind of border issues, economic integration, stuff like that, global value chains. We're all trying to support the legacy of Bob Mosbacher, who was Secretary of Commerce for George H.W. Bush. And when he became ill, the president wanted to commemorate his legacy. And so they set up the Mosbacher Institute. And now I'm the third director, and we've been focusing a lot on all those issues that were really important to Secretary Mosbacher, trade, international development, finance, that sort of thing. It's been really an honor to serve.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a great position to have, and I mean, I have some personal interest in economics. Certainly not trained in any way, but it's an interesting subject to be sure. And it seems like if you're talking about international economics, tariffs, migration, all that stuff, this has got to be interesting times to live in.
It's really great because I'm sort of an economic evangelist, to be honest with you. And it's great to hear you say that you're interested in economics because, we believe, and I try and teach my students, that economics is not just about the stock market or dollars or, sort of what's going on in banks. I mean, it's actually all about how people make decisions. And it's all about our day-to-day decisions and how we get through our lives. We're constantly making decisions, right? Do I go to this store? Do I go to that store? Do I get up and go to work? Or do I take another 10 minutes and stay in bed? It's all about those kinds of decisions. And those decisions ladder up into global geopolitical consequences. And so it touches everything from the smallest micro to the biggest macro. I think it's all about everything, to be honest.
Yeah. And that's kind of that's what makes it interesting to me. Would you say that economics is about human action?
That's 100% what it's about. It's all about human action. You're exactly right, Brad. You couldn't have described it better. It's all about everything that we do, why we live in society, why we engage with people for the most part. I mean, we like people, right? We like our friends and family, but a lot of times we engage with people out of economic reasons.
Yeah, for sure. So, the reason why we're talking today is we're talking about trash, recycling, plastic bottles, all that stuff. Are we importing trash to the United States?
Shockingly, Brad, we are. We are importing trash from Canada, Mexico, and even China. And that is just staggering to me, especially in this era where people are anti-imports and they're really down on trade. This idea that Texas in particular is importing trash is just kind of mind-blowing.
I mean, well, certainly it's not what you think of when you think of imports. You don't think of trash as an import, but we'll get to sort of why that is, why we're doing that. But correct me if I'm wrong. We send our trash. I know I've read this somewhere. We send our trash or our recycling, at least in many cases, internationally to China or to Mexico, right?
Yeah, so one of the crazy things about international trade is that there's a lot of two-way trade, right? So we send beer to Australia and they send their beer to us, and we send cars to Mexico, they send their cars to us. And so there's a lot of two-way trade in lots of things, and trash is an example of that.
Well, I guess for cars, I could see, whatever, or beer. An Australian might like Budweiser, or we're in Texas, they might like Shiner, right? So they want that, and we might want, I don't know what's an Australian beer, whatever. Sure, there we go, Foster's. That's right. I forget. And maybe there's some taste differences there. But with trash or plastic or recycling, I don't really know what would be the advantage of a Chinese bottle versus an American bottle. Like why is Texas bringing it in from Mexico as opposed to Louisiana?
Yeah, and that's a great question. A lot of it has to do with the production relationship. So one of the things you might have seen if you're driving around the highways of the U.S. is that you'll see logging trucks go passing you each way, right? They're just, why can't we just keep those logs over there and they keep their logs
Sure.
over here and we wouldn't have to ship all the time. But people develop these relationships with other people, with their suppliers, and they just shop around and they find it's the lowest cost. So a lot of times, even shipping the trash from other parts of the country to Texas is actually more expensive than getting it from China or Mexico.
That is kind of wild. So are there, with all the tariffs talks, is importing trash, is that being affected by the tariffs? And I say,
So,
when we say trash, I think we're also talking about recyclable materials, correct?
well, and actually, we're mainly talking about recyclable materials,
Yes,
right? I mean, part of the reason, if I may just kind of jump, I'll get to your question, right? I mean,
please.
obviously, but one of the main reasons why we're doing this is because if you look at those bottles you buy, like you buy your soda or your Coke or whatever, it's going to say recycled content, right? There's a recycled bottle or whatever it says it on the label. But Texas doesn't collect enough recycled bottles in order to meet the demand of Texas bottlers. So they have to find those bottles somewhere, and that's why they're bringing them in from Texas, from Mexico and Canada and China. Now,
Yep.
the tariffs, obviously, getting back to your question, I think that that's a key question. And as an economist who does international economics, I hate to say this, but now I'm old, so I feel like I can get away with it a little bit more. But we don't exactly know, right? Because the tariffs have been very much up in the air. Like on Tuesday, they're one thing, and Wednesday, they're another. So what we do know is that tariffs on recycled materials went to zero in around 2015. So we used to be taxing trash coming in, and then we reduced those tariffs to zero. And now the president obviously is trying to impose tariffs on everything. So everything includes trash. So we expect that they're also being tariffed, but we're still not, we're trying to figure out exactly the details that they're working out.
Yeah, I guess you have to go through the process to figure it out,
Yeah.
see what you get charged if you get charged. So,
Yeah.
um, so we're, there Texas, some Texas manufacturer might be producing a plastic item, maybe it's a water bottle, or whatever, made from recycled materials. Maybe it's, I don't know, it could be other things, shoes or other materials. Doesn't have to be plastic bottles. And they're getting some of that stuff from Mexico or Canada, China, because we don't produce enough of that here in Texas for Texans to use. What is the recycling rate in Texas?
Yeah, so shockingly, Texas is one of the states that produces the most plastic bottles and other recyclable materials in the country. We're a very, very large state, and we drink a lot of soda or pop or Coke or whatever you want to call it, wherever you are. And there's different words everywhere.
Sure.
But, we also are one of the states that does the least recycling. So even though we're producing some of the largest numbers of bottles, we recycle the least. And specifically, when you asked about the rate, it's about 22% overall. And when you actually look at plastic specifically, it's lower than that. It's actually about 19%. So we actually have a lot of room for improvement here on capturing that recycled material.
Our recycling rate is only 19%.
Yeah, for plastic bottles, it was in 2021. That was the latest data that we have. But yeah, it's close to 20%, a little bit less for plastics.
I guess just for comparison's sake, I know that obviously there's states that are much higher than that. What would be like a top recycler? Is it someone like California?
Well, you'd think so. California does a good job. Also, there's some of the other states, Iowa and some of the other states sort of in the Northeast, Massachusetts, because what they have is these deposit refund systems that there's been lots of studies on, right? So what they do, and I don't know if you ever watched Seinfeld, but there was a great sub-series on the show Seinfeld about how different states offer different return values for recycled containers, right? So when you bring those containers back in, you get money for them. And depending on how much you offer, that can really incentivize people to bring those materials back to the store or wherever.
Yeah, so I want to talk about the bottle deposit refund systems, and sort of what that might look like in Texas. Is that the best way to encourage more recycling? I try to recycle as much as I can, but when it comes to things like, I don't know, a yogurt container, right? They say you have to wash that before you put it in the recycling, and it might seem like a small step, but we eat a lot of yogurt in this house. I got three kids,
Yep.
and you're asking me to wash my trash. It's
Yeah.
that's sort of a big ask sometimes when everything else is going on. I don't know. Do I is this the best way? Do I have to wash my trash? Do you know?
So the thing is, yeah, they want you to rinse stuff out, but a lot of times that's mainly because when you put it in the garbage, right, in the recycling, then especially yogurt, it turns bad. It can get kind of smelly or whatever. So a lot of times that's for you. But it helps to rinse stuff out. But I agree with you, right? It's really hard to argue about washing your trash before you've washed yourself and taken a shower. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to wash my trash before I wash me.
Yeah.
So it is a little bit, yeah, I feel you. I feel you.
So there's little things like that maybe could change. And I don't know. Maybe they don't have it. It does make it more difficult to recycle the stuff if it's not clean, and I understand that. I try my best, but when it comes to a bottle deposit refund system, which is there are other states that have it and to varying degrees. I think in that Seinfeld episode that you're speaking of, I think it was Kramer was taking large amounts across state lines, maybe to New Jersey because they offered
Yeah.
5 cents more or something like that.
Yep.
And of course, as Seinfeld is wont to do, hilarity ensued. So, what is a bottle deposit refund system? How does that work?
Yeah, so the thing is, I think it takes a lot of the pressure off if we're just talking about bottles, because you don't really have to rinse out a bottle per se, right? As long as you drink everything, it's pretty much empty and good to go.
Yeah.
And the way it works is like you go to your grocery store, you're going to buy your Coke or your bottles or whatever, and then you drink it all up, and then you just bring it back to the store, and then you return it to the store, and they can give you a coupon for purchases at that store might be one way to do it, or other places will just give you, you can actually get cash back from the machine sometimes. I mean, there's lots of different ways to set it up. A lot of those details haven't really been decided because we're still working it out. But the basic idea would be that a deposit refund system is when you go to the store, you pay like an extra 5-10 cents per bottle. And then when you go home, you drink it, you bring it back, you get that money back. So you have an incentive, a monetary economic incentive to make sure that that bottle gets back to the store or the recycling facility.
Yeah, it reminds me. I think like shopping malls, they'll have like a little cart for kids or whatever, and if you return it, you get your money back. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
Um, but is there okay? So this happens, and there's other states that have bottle bills like this. From like you said, Iowa, I think does it. Maine, California, Michigan,
Yep.
Vermont, several states. Is there? I mean, how different is it from state to state? I mean, I'm sure that there are small differences. The overall feel is probably the same, but is there one that stands out above all the rest that's better?
So yeah, so I mean, Iowa stands out a lot because there's been a lot of controversy, and people had a hard time getting used to it. But now it's been very, very effective. When you look at, there's 10 U.S. states that have the deposit refund system, and Iowa stands out as one of the better ones. They're actually able to set that. They found a way to set that level of deposit so that they're going to incentivize the people without really causing too much chaos, right? So that's a state. And one of the things, Brad, to tell you about like all of the 10 states, when you compare the recycling rates in the 10 states with these deposit refund systems with any other state or all other states, the differences are just dramatic. I mean, these recycling rates get up, above 50% in some of these states. And it's really a big policy that has a dramatic effect on people's behavior.
And does it actually? So there's, you get you buy a bottle of water or whatever, and you get from a store, and I don't know. Today it costs $1. Let's say if this passed tomorrow and was enacted tomorrow, would that is the price still baked in? Does the price of goods typically go up after a bottle bill is introduced? Just
Well, in the sense that,
that
yeah,
deposit.
Yeah, so a lot of times the stores are going to add on that 10-cent deposit, right? So you're
Sure.
going to pay more up front, but then the beauty is that you get that money back, you know what I mean? So it's a
Sure.
short-term increase, but then you get the money back when you return the bottle. So it's not like when we put a tariff on tomatoes from Mexico where the price just goes up by 25% or even cars or everything else. This is money you can actually get back, which is these days it seems like a big change from other kinds of tariffs that we've been seeing out there in the policy world.
For sure. I don't know if this never has anything like this ever happened in Texas. I have a distinct memory, and it could be placed in my head from TV and Seinfeld and movies and stuff like that. You know, I recall as a child the idea that if I brought some cans back to whatever the store, I'd get a nickel for each one or whatever. I don't know if that was maybe a private incentive by some local, at a local store. It wasn't on the state level, it wasn't a government or statewide policy. Uh, am I misremembering? Is that something that used to exist?
Yeah, so obviously I can't speak for every part of
Sure.
Texas, but there have been different incentives tried around the state for different types of smaller programs. And we really haven't seen either the statewide or the national wide recycling thing as big as what we're thinking about here. So yeah, I remember too when I was a kid, that was a big deal, right? There was a big incentive to bring stuff back to the store, and you could get money or whatever. At least or at least you got what some people call warm glow. And a lot of times that seems to have just kind of dropped off. And as a result, the recycling rates have just been dropping. And so we're trying to figure out a way to turn that back around.
So are there bills being pushed at the Texas legislature right now to enact a bottle bill here in Texas?
Yeah, there is. I know they're having hearings, as a matter of fact, this week in Austin on a bottle bill that's being considered in Texas. That would be for a deposit refund system. And we're waiting to see how those committee discussions go. I know that there are a lot of stakeholders that you wouldn't always think of who are going to be weighing in. For example, landfill owners. They're worried about the land. Believe it or not, like landfill owners are kind of powerful here in Texas, and they're worried that if we do a deposit refund system, people are going to throw away less trash into the landfill, and that's where their money comes from. So they're pushing against this recycling initiative a little bit, and so we're trying to reassure them. You know what I'm saying? That there's still going to be trash. There's still
Yeah.
going to be trash. There's going to be people and who want to throw stuff away, and it's not necessarily going to be targeting the landfills as much, but it might be really targeting waters, lakes, and streams and coastlines. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of these bottles just get tossed out the window now when you're driving down the road or whatever. Even though we don't mess with Texas,
Yeah.
people are forgetting about that, and a lot of these bottles are ending up in the lakes and streams. So that's what we're trying to really target. We're not trying to take money from the landfills at all. We're just trying to clean up those lakes and streams. If we could just capture those materials, it wouldn't affect the landfills at all, and we would make a big difference in terms of our imports. We're just trying to replace these imports with stuff that we're throwing away in lakes and streams now.
Yeah, I guess I definitely want to talk about the environmental aspect of all of this. I guess I'm just sort of surprised at the landfill owners. I mean, obviously, if a bill affects your business, I understand that businesses will go and testify against that bill. In this case, I guess I just don't really know how a landfill business works. Are they getting paid per tonnage that gets dumped? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, right. So you have to usually you pay for trash collection, right? And
Yeah,
then you're paying for that trash collection, and they got to take that trash somewhere, and they have to dump it somewhere. So if you own the land and you're like, I'll take that trash, I'll fill up my landfill with trash that you're going to bring me, then you have to pay the landfill owners as well, right? So
sure.
that's part of where that money goes. I mean, you have to pay for the shipping and the dumping, and so that's what you're paying for. And so as long as you're paying for it some way, right? I mean recycling would actually cut down, stuff that might otherwise end up in the environment.
Yeah.
Maybe it would affect trash at the landfills, maybe not, but probably not as much as people think.
Yeah, I can't. I don't. I mean, maybe I'm certainly no landfill expert or trash expert, but I find it hard to believe that it would be dramatic. But I could be wrong. So, what are some of the solutions? Are there other solutions besides a bottle bill? Why that other people have tried? Why is a bottle bill preferable?
Sure. So the other main way that people think about recycling is called single stream recycling. And what that is you just take all of your recycling and you just dump it into one big bin.
Yeah.
And so that's your cardboard, your newspaper, your tin cans, your plastic bottles, everything. And then that would get sorted out later at another facility. And, that's great. It's much better than nothing, of course, right? It's better than nothing, but it's easy for the consumers. But the real problem with that is a lot of material gets lost, and it's also difficult and expensive a lot of times to sort all this stuff out. And so, people don't like sorting it out. I mean, let's just be honest, they don't like doing it themselves. That's why we're just focusing on the bottle bill right now, right? So you could just dump the rest of your stuff or do whatever you want for now, but let's just take one baby step and let's just capture those bottles. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? I think that would be a great place just to start. And then once you sort of get used to doing the bottles, then, cans are not that big of a deal. And you know what I mean? We got to take baby steps when people are talking about change.
Yeah, of course. I mean, change is certainly, people push back on change for all different reasons, even if it's positive change or, it seems like positive change, but they don't think it's positive. Obviously, in the landfill owner's case, this may be a negative change for their pocketbook. And I can wrap my head around the logic of that, even though I may disagree. What are some of the other obstacles getting something like this passed in Texas?
Sure. So obviously, there's some political opposition, as we've already talked about. But in addition to that, one of the concerns, which is true with every piece of legislation, is the details, right? So, I mean, exactly where are we going to collect these materials? Is it going to be at the stores? Is it at the grocery stores? If that's true, then you're going to have buy-in from the grocery stores, which means giving them incentives. Or are we going to have municipalities and cities and towns set up these recycling centers? And, we haven't worked out some of those details, and just working out those details and getting the relevant stakeholders at least supportive enough is another one of the obstacles, right? I mean, that's why it's hard getting legislation passed in general, as I'm sure you know, because you do such a great job on the podcast about important stuff. But, people are always overcoming that kind of inertia and change, because you have to organize all these people to do things a little bit different, is always a big obstacle.
Yeah, for sure. There's always, like I said, that people push back on change for a variety of reasons. There's, you're talking about maybe getting buy-in from a local grocery store or grocery store chain, um, or a municipality. Maybe it's on the city level, maybe county level, whatever. The devil's going to be in the details. Is it? I know that there are private entities. We discussed it sort of earlier. I have those childhood memories, but I know there are private entities today. TerraCycle, Recycle Bank, whatever. I don't, is one better than the other? I'm not really sure, but I know they exist. I mean, is that something, getting buy-in from a grocery store may just be encouraging them to partner with a private business that does this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in 2019, recycling supported nearly 23,000 jobs in Texas, right? And, that's, over almost 7,000 in material collection. And what that means is exactly what you said. You're 100% right, that there's already groups out there that are working on this. And it's a great opportunity to partner with some of these organizations. They could even be nonprofits. They could be other groups that even include some volunteer work, right? Because when you have a project in your town, you want to do some volunteer work. There's lots of different ways to make this happen, and we're not starting from scratch. I mean, as you said, the rate is pretty low, like 19-20% for our recycling rate, but it's not zero. So it's not like people are not aware of recycling. And so we're just trying to build on the progress we've made and expand it out a little bit. And I think what you were suggesting is these partnerships with some of these nonprofits. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine in a place like Austin where I live, recycling is a big deal, and I can't this would probably go off like gangbusters in Austin.
Yep.
Certainly. It's part of the culture, it's part of it's ingrained in all of us since we were kids here in Austin. Recycle, recycle,
Yep.
recycle. I can imagine some more rural communities. Maybe I'm being, maybe I don't spend enough time in rural communities, but I would imagine the recycling rates are a little bit lower. And this might actually encourage them to do more because they don't have that. It wasn't ingrained in them culturally through whatever process. And now they're getting paid for it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, as we started off by saying, I mean, economics is about everything, right? And it's all about setting up incentives that are going to motivate people to make a change, right? And I think that's really important. And I also just also to circling back to the beginning again. I mean, one of the things that I think is a great discussion point for a lot of those rural communities is they're so anti-import right now that the idea that we're going to be importing trash from China instead of, you could stop those imports by just taking this bottle back to the store. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? You could do your own part at stopping those imports by just taking your bottle back. And I think that that is something that might also resonate with a lot of people, especially in
yeah,
those rural areas.
for sure. And there may even be, I mean, grocery stores partner with ATM owners. Doesn't have to be like a big bank, and
Mhm.
they maybe there's a fee that the ATM owner pays the grocery store, and for like that space. Same thing could probably happen with recycling. I could go start a business where I collect all the bottles. HEB or whoever doesn't have to worry about it. I just give them a portion of the revenue or whatever. So seems like
Yeah.
there's maybe some entrepreneurial aspects to this as well. So that's sort of that segues nicely into what I want to talk about next is the sort of the future. What does this look like? The future of recycling if a deposit refund system is enacted in Texas. You've mentioned cleaning up, stopping the stuff from getting into our rivers, lakes, streams, coastline, stuff like that. Or just ending up at the local park. That's not good either. So there is an environmental aspect to this. Is it just about the environment, or does it also improve the economy of Texas?
Well, I think that there's huge economic benefits, and let me tell you just a couple of them. Number one, as I said, there's already thousands of people working in recycling, and expanding that out creates jobs for people here, and that seems to be also a big thing people are worried about, right? I mean, and I think that's important. But the other thing that people don't always appreciate is that when you are recycling, you're also saving energy because the amount of energy it takes to make a new bottle or a new can, especially like a new aluminum can, in particular, if we're talking about aluminum,
Yep.
just to highlight it, is much, much greater than it takes to recycle existing aluminum, right? So if we were to recycle, I mean, we could save enough energy to power over 100,000 Texas households annually. You know what I'm saying? And so it's going to save energy. And you could say, well, I don't really care that much about saving energy, but you do because energy prices are very sensitive to demand. And if we lower the demand for energy, that's going to lower your energy bills in the state of Texas. And the state of Texas has its own energy system, right? So it's important for us to all do our part to, maybe bring those prices down through a drop in demand. So, I mean, I think that's going to also benefit the economy because if energy is cheaper, that makes everything else we do cheaper. So it lowers cost for stores, it lowers cost for factories, it lowers cost for all kinds of economic activity. So I think the energy benefits might also be really significant, and I think that's another key selling point going forward.
Yeah, I know. I think it was Dan Patrick before the session started was talking about the energy demand is going to increase much more than expected over the next, I think it was decade, 5 to 10 years, mostly due to AI and crypto mining and stuff like that. Uh, and even here in Austin, the city council is constantly talking about reducing demand. And I've always kind of wondered, well, how can the city of Austin reduce demand? My demand is the same no matter what the city of Austin does. Are they going to tell me I can't use? Are they going to turn off my power? They can't do that, right? But
No.
it's actually a way that they could reduce demands overall by encouraging people to use, by forcing less energy use this way.
Well, yeah, but it's not, you want to give people the incentives. I think
Sure.
the better the incentives are, the more likely they're going to participate. And the more they participate, the more energy the state saves. And I think that that's going to be better for everybody because you're right about the data centers and you're right about the AI. I mean, that's another thing. It's another area we work on at the Mosbacher Institute. We can talk about that too, right? But the data centers is going to be something we're going to be working on in the next year. We actually just got an agreement with another big data company to monitor energy in Texas and the country, and finding other really creative ways to reallocate that energy to shift it away from some places so we can have more for AI and data is going to be one of the big policy challenges of the next 5, 10 years.
Yeah, and this is so. I mean, this would just be. there's, I guess, it's beneficial in a lot of ways. People, it provides an economic incentive for people. They get a little bit of their money back every time they go to the grocery store, however often they do it. It cleans up the rivers, lakes, streams, waterways, Gulf Coast. We all like that. Don't mess with Texas. That's been ingrained in my mind forever. Let's try to figure that out. And it also reduces energy demand. It seems like this is, I don't know. I don't know what the downside would be. It seems hard other than to landfill owners.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said before, Brad, I mean, people just hate change and they hate doing things that are new. But, these are great times we're trying lots of new things at the federal level. And there's lots of new stuff happening in this country. Maybe this is something that we could try that's new, that's going to reduce our imports, but at the same time have a lot of other positive benefits. I think it's time, and Texas could really be a national and global leader in recycling. Since we're already a leader in energy, right? We're going to have to ramp up our data use. We need to find ways to reduce energy, and I think that this recycling is a great way to get a lead on that.
Yeah, and this doesn't seem like a partisan issue. I don't know what sort of pushback there is on the legislative end, but certainly this is something that there's something good for both sides of the aisle, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're rabid anti-imports and you're trying to stop imports from Mexico and Canada, trash is a great place to start. Like, you could argue whether or not we don't want to import cars, right? Or you know what I mean? But we definitely don't want to be importing trash. So let's stop importing trash by collecting our own trash that we already have here in Texas, right? I mean, let's do America first in terms of trash and recycling. And I think it's going to be a great example of the type of narratives we've been hearing.
Yeah, and it seems like the political messaging writes itself. Let's stop importing trash.
Yeah, that's why we're so excited about this project, because I think it's exactly what you said. You couldn't have said it. I couldn't say it better. It's something for everybody, and it's nonpartisan, and it's great all around. And we're really hoping that the legislature is listening as well, and they're willing to get on board.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Raymond Robertson, I appreciate you taking the time. We talked about a lot of stuff here, pretty in depth here. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we sign off?
Well, I just wanted to thank you for all the great work you're doing, Brad. I mean, I think you're doing a great service for the state of Texas, and people really love listening to you. You're doing a great job. So I want to thank you very much for having me on the show. And if there's anything else I could ever do, let me know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Is there a website or social media that you wanted to plug?
Yeah, so if you check out the Mosbacher Institute, we have lots of great little policy briefs that we do. We have great white paper series. We have great opportunities for students in service around the state. And if you have any questions about international economics, I'd love to chat. So I'd love to send that out to your listeners, that we're available to the public in general. We'd love to, keep the conversation going.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Raymond Robertson. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much.